Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Reko Movement Podcast, where we chat about digital minimalism and digital health. So I'll be your host, Lucas, today, and today we're with Antoine and Joshua Blais, who needs no introduction. And so I'm very honored to have you, Joshua, today to chat with us, and let's get started. So
Sounds
basically,
good. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, awesome.
thanks a lot. So basically today I like to talk about how basically um, the Linux experience, the experience of using a computer, a workspace that's completely tailored for you, is wildly different from using a phone that's bloated, full of stuff you don't need, and how to make it closer to the experience of using a tailored workspace like Linux. And so let's see where it goes. I have one question to start out with. So in February, you published an article about how you're using your phone with a minimal launcher, trying to remove the distractions, make it more useful for yourself. So how's that going? Like, are you still using it in the same way? Did you change anything from since then?
I actually have fully reinstalled Android from from stock Android
Yeah.
on the phone, and I went to F-Droid and essentially installed only free and open source software from there. So it's kind of been like I debloated the phone drastically, took off, well, actually quite a bit of functionality that I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have even taken off of the phone. Because when I try to do, for example, scanning of images on my phone, it's broken now. So I've debloated it actually almost too far, which
Yeah.
is who cares, right? So, but no, I've taken the browser off my phone. I've taken pretty much everything that's not a utility and something that benefits my life off of the phone. I've coming from a few years ago, probably about 8 years ago, I remember looking down at my phone and being like, 8 hours of screen time. What are you
Wow.
doing with your life, man?
Yeah.
Right? And coming from that, I was just like, I have to figure out a way to just get rid of the uh, dopamine scroll driven addiction that this device is perfect for. For me, it's been kind of a progressive journey to effectively dumbifying my smartphone. I do think that there are still validities or valid applications on a smartphone. But that being said, I think that using it more as a communication device
Yeah,
is a far better way of using a phone than it is to, try to do social media, watch YouTube,
Yeah.
do all of that sort of thing. And yeah,
yeah, I completely agree with your sentiment. I feel like phones really at the core should be a tool as well as a communication device, used for function and kind of providing value. I think there's a lot of useful thing nowadays on our phone, navigation, music, communicating with the people you love. But I think this device over the years has progressively evolved to more entertainment and kind of addiction-driven apps. Even nowadays with things like YouTube Shorts that are or TikTok that are kind of even more addictive than what we had before. One thing for me, I have an iPhone and kind of I tried also other options. I think maybe we lost Lucas, but
all good.
yeah,
I'll be
I have an
back.
iPhone and I tried also kind of the other opposite end with the flip phone device.
Right.
But one thing I do struggle with my iPhone is kind of even by trying to blocking some stuff, including I removed the App Store, with the parental controls and kind of blocking different apps. I still find that by using this device, you can kind of go back to your old habits after a certain moment. It definitely does help, but I wonder from your experience, dumbing down your Android device, how effective was it in terms of keeping that change over the long run? Do you find that you come back to some of your old habits sometimes, or
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
effective?
Definitely, I think that is something that I've struggled with in that, for example, let's say I have the F-Droid APK on my phone. It's just too accessible to re-download the F-Droid store and go download a browser again for something like that. So for me, like doing the universal Android debloater, I'm sure you're familiar with that. You can actually like hook your phone up to your computer, fully take off effectively the Play Store. You can take off like everything so that it actually, I know that the apps don't get completely deleted. They get like sent down to, I want to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but it sounds like they get sent down to like the root account, which is under the user account, which effectively makes those apps unreachable from the user account. So effectively, the only way to get those apps back would be to either reinstall Android on your phone or to reconnect the phone and then reverse what you had previously done. So like that point of friction in and of itself is enough for me generally to like not have to worry about that. But yeah, like if you have things, you know, within an arm's reach, hey, we're all addicts nowadays, right? So it's very easy to just reach out and be like, oh, let's reinstall the App Store, you know, like, and for me, I know myself, and that is like even just too much for me. So ADB has been a pretty decent way of doing it. That being said, I do think that Graphene OS in the Android space right now is like the gold standard when it comes to kind of the starting from a very debloated, if you want to use that word, starting point, and then you can kind of go from there. That's kind of at least been my experience. iPhone, I haven't used an iPhone since like 2020, I want to say. So almost, I guess, 6 years already. So I'm not really sure like how that space has kind of progressed or anything. But previously, when I had the iPhone, it was actually impossible to get stuff off of it. Like you couldn't remove Safari, for example. You couldn't do some of that stuff. So I know that they have come a little bit of a ways when it comes to that sort of customization. But yeah, for me, like the iPhone was like a no-go. It had to be an Android from that perspective.
Yeah. No, to be honest, I don't have as much experience on the Android side, but yeah, it sounds very interesting. From your setup, do you think there's some functions that you're missing, almost like you said, you remove too much? You know, maybe you could elaborate on this a little bit. I'm curious to hear, because for me, it's always been the trade-off, like, because I tried a flip phone for a while and it was great, you know, because I think the physical form factor does play into the trigger as well. You know, and having a flip phone, even though technically speaking, you have a rudimentary browser, you know, you could get on YouTube, but there's just no way I'll find myself scrolling on a flip phone device. You know, so I thought that was really fun, and you know how you have the reflex of kind of taking off your phone in an elevator or kind of when you're bored. You know, you don't take out your flip phone when you're bored. It's just not as much of a reflex. But you know, the thing is, there's a lot of things that were truly impractical. You know, including kind of messaging or different things. You know, so I'm curious about your setup, if you're able to find a healthy in between, or if there's things you miss. You know.
Yeah, for me, like I think that the smartphone in and of itself has utility, right? So specifically for navigation, when you're in like a city you don't know, like that's invaluable. Messaging via something like Signal, or I know a lot of people use WhatsApp and stuff like that. I avoid that. But any sort of those like internet linked messaging applications are, I mean, they're first of all, they're more secure than MMS by a drastic margin, and they're also, you know, like where a lot of people do actually hang out in, for lack of a better term. The things that I kind of did with my phone that I took almost too much away from, or I debloated almost too far, is that Samsung, unfortunately, for example, they have so many of their system services like baked into the OS that if you start taking out those services, you start breaking functionality. So like if I wanted to change my wallpaper on my phone, like I was like, I can't do this. Why can't I do this? So I actually had to like download an F-Droid app to change my wallpaper and stuff. I actually took out native functionality from the phone that I probably needn't have done. But other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've taken. I guess the other thing that I took out was the like Google Wallet support. Okay. So I mean, that's a debatable functionality. I've heard both sides of the argument that one, it's more secure than using your physical credit card. And the other is that, I mean, like you have your credit card on your phone, like you're kind of creating this perfect device to steal for everybody to, you know what I'm saying? So, but other than that, I wouldn't say that there's any functionality that I'm lacking. I was like you, like I was actually thinking, hey, like, why don't we go like Nokia brick phone and just like get rid of any sort of temptation to be distracted or whatever in my day to day. And I would agree with you that doing research on it, and I mean, like I haven't personally daily drove we'll call them a feature phone, but there's functionality that's lacking that is like a massive friction point that I think that you would kind of be missing with the going that route. And I think a lot of people that do go that route almost use it as like we'll call it a detox. Like we're all, again, we're using addict language here, but like a detox from the smartphone and then going back to the smartphone 90 days later or something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've at least seen in that space.
A lot of people actually use it, I think, kind of as a secondary device. You know, they kind of have it, but keep their main smartphone maybe just on Wi-Fi for different, you know, things that the flip phone can't do. So yeah, definitely right now I think it's kind of lacking. But yeah, so what do you think would be the ideal device? You know, if we were to dream a little bit, like, do you think your current setup, staying in the Android ecosystem, is good or good enough, or do you think there could be something better? Or because from my perspective, you know, on the hardware side, I think if we're gonna cut down a lot of the functionality and go a little bit more minimal, I think the hardware itself is not really optimized for this use case. Do we really need such a powerful device? You know, such a large screen. You know, these phones are also quite expensive, so I think it's sometimes, you know, it feels like you know, we're kind of, it's almost like we're wrapping the car with this new exterior, but we're not kind of changing the engine, the underlying engine. So curious to hear your opinion on this.
I mean, I really do believe that there needs to be a third player in the space, because I think that Android versus iOS, like you essentially have those two options if you want to use a mobile device in the current, you know, environment, we'll call it. I know that there are attempts at doing the Linux device. I know that you have like Ubuntu Touch, I want to say, or something along those lines. There's a few others.
The Pine phone too.
That are of that persuasion. They're just, they're just not all the way there yet, right? Like there's functionality, like core functionality, like phone calls being dropped consistently, like that sort of thing. That has been like the main complaint and the kind of the meme of the Linux smartphone environment for probably the last 5 years. I don't like the duopoly. Like I don't like the fact that it's essentially Android and then Apple. I don't like the stuff that Google's doing from the from the core Android and then trying to essentially like shoehorn that into every other carrier Android version. And I mean, everything is downstream of Google's Android at the end of the day. I like the Graphene OS project. And I'm interested to see what they do in the next couple of years here with the Motorola partnership, if you guys are familiar with that, because that kind of breaks them away from the, I mean, it was kind of ironic.
Right now can only use Pixel, right?
A Google phone, correct. You have to use a Google phone to run Graphene OS. It's kind of ironic, right? Like to run this secure Android version, I have to play with the devil to be able to do it, right? So it's kind of an interesting paradigm in that space. But Motorola has said that they're going to be partnering with Graphene and supporting that operating system into 2027. So that'll be interesting as well. That being said, like I do really think that the device is more so I don't use it for work purposes other than like obviously like contacting and discussing with clients or something like that, right? When it comes to texting and messaging, I'm almost doing that on my desktop because I can type at 100 words a minute on a keyboard. With my thumbs, I feel like I'm right. I think I'm maybe at like 30 words a minute, right? So I'm essentially 3 times faster input wise on a actual laptop or computer than I am on the phone. So it's you're kneecapping yourself. It's kind of a device of last resort almost for me personally. I know that a lot of people spend a lot of time on these things, but for me, it's kind of like the last thing that I want to be doing any of that sort of like serious operation work with.
And did you find
for
there
sure. I
were
agree.
any
So I
troubles,
think
like for example,
also,
using banking or SMS between family and friends? Like people complaining about not being able to reach out to you personally. So did you find any problems in that front in day-to-day life?
No, man, it's a lot simpler when you just don't have friends. No, I'm just kidding. No, like for me, I still have like Signal, for example. Like I've moved all of my friends. This was a friction point about 5 years ago, was getting everybody onto Signal. But once you have everybody on Signal, now it's like, okay, we can communicate across operating systems and whatever, right? Because you guys are young men, so you realize the if you don't have a blue bubble, you're not a human being type of conversation that you'll have with people. And it's like, it's hilarious, but it's also like the world that we live in. So, but for me, like, sorry, go ahead.
but yeah, I know you said the blue bubble. I know that's like a joke, but I actually, from my experience in uni, is Instagram. Like this was the main platform used to communicate, which I think is worse, because Instagram is closed, of course, right? But also bundled with all this other stuff. You can't just have the Instagram messaging. So it's the worst.
No, 100%. And before that, it was Snapchat, and I was like, why would people communicate with a closed source? To me, it's not really a thought, right? But I'm a few years older than you guys, I think. So I kind of like was just before everybody using social media as like the only way to talk to people, right? So I've talked to people that are like 22 years old in my community, and they're like, yeah, like if you don't have Instagram or you don't have whatever some of the other applications are, like you're essentially a non-person, right? So that's also the struggle that you face as a young person in today's world.
I think on one-on-one, it's not too bad from my experience. My close friends, they'll adapt to other platforms, if they really want to reach me. But yeah, if you want to be part of kind of larger group chats, depending on what you're trying to do, I think it changes on your phase of life you are, or what activities you're doing. But it can definitely be a challenge. You're moving 8 people to another platform. That's I think that's nearly impossible.
Now try to move everybody to like XMPP or something esoteric and see how that one goes.
Yeah.
But
sometimes
yeah, it's sorry, go ahead.
Sometimes it's so dysfunctional, we end up kind of messaging one by one. We're 5 of us, but you call one friend, calls the other friend, calls the other friend. It's just we can't agree on anything. I do wish for messaging there was a more kind of open option. I think that would work cross platforms. That would be.
Have you explored something like XMPP or like some of the more we'll call them secure messaging? Like obviously Signal is kind of the one that most people discuss. Obviously Telegram is another one. I don't personally like. I don't know what my opinion is on actually either of those platforms. I would much prefer to like self-host, for example, a Signal. Or sorry, not a Signal, but an XMPP instance on like a piece of hardware that I actually control, and have people, access that sort of thing, because then you actually have some semblance of communications, like security and privacy, right? I do really think that like the protocols that we created in the 90s, early 2000s, that being like IRC, XMPP, and even email, have massive validity when it comes to the like privacy and specifically the privacy side of things, where you can, let's say, PGP encrypt an email, and that being delivered to somebody that only has those keys is able to access that communication. That's a pretty interesting piece of software that's kind of withstood rather the test of time. So I'm with you. I think that I definitely prefer those open and we'll call them auditable methods of communication. But I'm also, there's all types of people, right? And I'm definitely of one persuasion where like people are like, why would you even care about that sort of thing, right? So
I think it's good. It's good to care about these things, And I think if you ask like, do you care about privacy? I don't think there's a lot of people that say that I don't care about privacy. Like, I think it's quite a mainstream concern. But yeah, for me, I do see the trade-off. It's like, if you want, especially when it comes to messaging, it's such a social thing. You can be more picky about your options, more extreme, but you might have to drop a couple links and can't communicate as effectively with everyone. But I'm curious. I think it's an interesting segue into privacy when it comes to phones. I'm curious to hear your experience and your opinions on it. Do you think it's a concern at the OS level in terms of privacy, or with your current setup, or do you think there's some improvements in the space, or just general thoughts on privacy? I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, if you don't build the hardware yourself, like, there's always that potential of obviously like nefarious actors, right? So for me, like, it becomes like, what is your threat level? What's your like, how far do you want to take it, right? Like, do you want to just throw the phone in the river type of thing? Like, because I know that there are definitely people that do that.
Yeah.
I mean, end of the day, like, the internet is a insecure protocol by definition, right? So you have to understand that going into it, and then being like, what am I willing to accept? What am I willing to like, how far do I really want to go? Do I even want to be, do I want to just move into a cabin in the woods type of thing? Or do I want to, still have some semblance of a social life, right? So all these questions are something you have to ask yourself and go about it in whatever way that you decide to, right? For me, like, I know that because of, let's say, the lockdown bootloader and stuff, like, there's no way that I know exactly what's running on my device, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like, I would love a device that I actually would be able to audit all the way down or somebody would be able to audit, probably not me, because there's way smarter people than me in this space, but be able to see like what's actually happening behind the scenes. Where are these requests being made? And like, that sort of thing is for me would be much more interesting than just saying, okay, Google, take all my data, mark it to me, tell everybody where I am all the time, that sort of thing. Like, I don't like that. Right. So, and I run Linux day to day on all of my hardware because I didn't like that. Right. I didn't like the idea of, again, essentially two proprietary operating systems controlling the space and giving people no option for that ability to make a choice for themselves, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting for sure. Yeah, I do think there's a cost. I think maybe most people don't fully realize, like, all this free software option we have from these big companies. We pay the cost in a certain way from our attention, from our privacy. And it's a big incentive to make these platforms kind of addictive and collect all the information they can. And yeah, it is free, but the cost is a bit hidden. But I think it's a cost to be aware of. It's interesting. But I think there's probably a middle ground that's possible. not to the extreme of throwing your phone in a river, as you said, but
Yeah.
kind of choosing software options that fit your goals a little more. And as you said, I think there could be more diversity in the space, more options to choose from compared to these kind of duopolies. So yeah, definitely very interesting.
Yeah. Tell me more about your project, because I'm interested to see like what are you guys thinking? Like, what do you think is the way forward in the space? Because there's obviously, I do really believe that a Linux phone is for me, of the utmost priority. Were it to actually go mainstream tomorrow, I would probably be an early adopter for it. I know that even the FSF has talked about doing the Libre phone project. I don't know if you guys have heard about that. But from my understanding, they wanted to start from like Lineage OS and kind of work back from there towards the kernel, and kind of like, do the offshoot from there. I'm not totally versed in the space, so tell me more about the project and what you guys are kind of, what's the vision for it?
Yeah, so I think what sparked the project really initially is the addiction component, kind of bringing back control over your time, and changing that tool from changing that device from like something based on entertainment to really a communication tool. And there's a lot of options. But I think really generally the way I see it is, on one extreme you have kind of flip phones, and even, I don't know if you're aware of the light phone, for example, which are kind of emerging category of dumb phone dedicated devices. And you can kind of take these devices and kind of crawl towards more functionality, try to get some, but it's going to be hard to reach something viable in my experience. At the current stage of the market, all these dumb phone solutions it's kind of hard to have this as a daily driver. And on the other side, you can take your Android or your iPhone and try to dumb it down as much as possible. And there's plenty of guides online, plenty of options for this, but you're still kind of running an Android or iPhone just kind of wrapped in this in this new layer. So I'm really interested to explore the space in between. So more concretely, I think we're exploring a Linux-based phone device. There's been a couple attempts. The Libre phone is an example. The Pine phone is an example. We kind of want to re-explore it, see what we can do. Right now, we're targeting a limited set of features. Calls, messaging, MMS. Other kind of simple things you can do on a Linux. For example, Signal would be or Telegram would be quite easy because it's already available.
Sure.
And we also want to explore things like music streaming. I think right now it's a feature that's not available in any dumb phones. It's kind of the most interesting one on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion. There's also open source map options that you can run on Linux. And we're kind of in the early stages, experimenting on what the phone would actually look like. Is it like do you have buttons like a T9 or QWERTY keyboard, or just like a touch display? I kind of favor the pure touch display. But a lot of people have like kind of a nostalgia for these old button devices.
I was going to say I miss my BlackBerry. I do miss my BlackBerry. So
a lot of people do. Do. But I think overall the touchscreen is a bit more practical. But it's been a real kind of challenge because some apps aren't even fully possible. Like WhatsApp is one massive use case that people keep referring to because it's the most popular messaging app.
Right.
But it's not really available on Linux, and even Open's kind of de-Googled Androids. I think the support is limited on what you can get. That's from my understanding.
You can try it. I think you Beeper.
So it kind of makes this space challenging because.
Yeah, sorry. I think my connection is a bit slow, but
I think there's different options, but there's definitely.
Yeah, Beeper I'm familiar with. I don't know if have you ever run it, Antoine?
Yeah, I've tried it. I think it kind of. I was trying with Instagram, and it worked a little bit, but it's kind of buggy. I think some people have been able to run some of these messaging app on like kind of de-Google devices, but
because it essentially amalgamates all of the like Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter. Yeah, like essentially the messaging applications in various social media platforms is my understanding.
Yeah, I think that's their current approach. From my personal usage, it did work, but it was it was a little bit buggy from time to time. Sometimes it kind of stopped working. But the other limitation is you need an existing account, for example. It doesn't create its own separate account, right? So, for example, WhatsApp, you need an actual, you need WhatsApp downloaded on an actual phone to create your account. I don't think WhatsApp supports just creating like an account on your computer, from my understanding. I haven't used WhatsApp much, but I think this has been the challenge in this space, to kind of add as much useful functionalities, but hitting a lot of roadblocks on what's possible.
So are you guys thinking hardware, or what are you thinking from that perspective?
Currently a hardware solution. Yeah.
Okay.
So
what sort of like,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, what sort of, no, sorry, the recording is, what sort of like cost are you guys targeting? Like, what sort of like price point would you want to be at?
I think it's a little early to say the exact price points, but ideally something in the range of like $300 is what I have in mind.
Okay.
So more on the affordable side. Again, I think if you're using this as a minimal device, there's no point in having something with a giant screen and a very top of the line compute. You can
right.
run something quite simple. Right now I'm kind of working with LVGL, C++ apps that are super lightweight. So, but it really depends on the final cost of materials for the phone and assembly. So it's kind of hard to predict that. I think maybe down the line there's going to be surprises. Perhaps it could be more expensive.
No, totally. But I mean, so essentially you want to compete with something like the light phone, like the, so essentially like the feature, we'll call them the feature, not smartphones, but feature phones, I suppose, is what you want to compete with.
Yeah.
I think one of the more different
has
is
a different approach.
accessibility portion.
They kind of do a wrapper around.
Like by using Linux, for example, you can add more apps and stuff, whereas the light phone, in my understanding, you can't like download new stuff or like update the phone itself.
Okay, gotcha. I don't have any experience with the feature phones, but I have seen, like, I've done research into it, right? Because I've been 5 minutes away from pulling the trigger on something like that, right? But the qualm that most people have with it is that obviously you give up functionality, right? So it becomes the balance of like, how do we balance the functionality, but also give people the reprieve from the potential addicting, the potential that's there on any smartphone, right? So,
yeah, definitely. I think it's a little bit of a future outlook. I think right now, this industry of the kind of dedicated dumb phone devices, it's still very early. I think realistically, for most people, the solution is to dumbify your existing smartphone. But if I'm thinking kind of 5-10 years down the line, I don't think this is going to be the solution. I think there could be a market for a dedicated device, that's more curated for this purpose.
Yeah. How old are you guys? You guys are probably your early 20s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your guys' generation is the one that's pushing back on this, right? Like, you guys almost, did you even live a life without the connectivity? You know what I mean?
I know, and actually, like a little bit, I would say, like when we were younger. Yeah. I think we started high school in 2015, so around that time, when we're kind of teenagers, like it was still early days. Kind of Netflix was coming out. YouTube was very different back in those days. So I think things weren't as addictive. I think that it was kind of starting, but I saw a big shift personally during COVID and with like TikTok nowadays. Pre-COVID, I think things were still addictive, but the general outlook was a little bit different from my read. When talking to people were still kind of finding a lot of positivity uh, within the web. But now I think it's a little bit. I don't know, but I know you have like probably opinions on this, but yeah, I think things changed a lot in the recent years. But we're kind of our generation. I think we lived a little bit of both, but definitely we didn't live like the flip phone 2010 era where it was. So
I have faith in the Zoomers, man. I do. I really do. I think that because I mean, I actually watched everything happen because I graduated high school in 11, right? So I got to see, I started going out on the town, for example, and like going out on the town, I could see people a couple of years into it starting to like sit by themselves on their phone while they're out on the town. Like it was weird, right? Whereas I also got a few years of that where people were like totally interactive and totally like willing to meet new people, and that sort of thing was also. So I kind of watched it in real time almost. My personal thesis is that the downfall of everything was effectively the introduction of the iPhone mass market in about 2007, 2008. That's when you started putting the internet in everybody's pockets, and that's where you open the door for like the social media applications on the smartphone that people carry with them everywhere they go, right? From there, that's where everything kind of started to snowball down in the wrong direction. And then I would agree with that, you guys, that over the last probably 5 years, it's gotten to the point where you have like people that are terminally online, right? Like just fully drinking the Kool-Aid of social media platforms and that sort of thing. And then you have the subset of people that are like, hey, like this doesn't actually give me any life benefits. This doesn't actually make me happier. This doesn't actually really, you know what I'm saying? And there has been that pushback away from it. So I'm interested to see the next 5 years where things go with it, because I do really actually, I have a faith in humanity. I don't know where that's, I don't know where it's founded, but I do have that still, right? So
a lot of people don't. It's crazy.
It's true.
And I still 100% do it. I think it's just right now we're kind of locked in the system where realistically you want to be a functional human being in society. You need a smartphone. You need these things, and kind of filled with all these kind of addictive options. I think it's just we're lacking some more options. But I think people are kind of realizing the double edge element of all these apps, and it can be fun. It can be fun to watch a movie, but it's not as fun when it's your movie number 10 in the week. So we'll see how it all goes. But I think there's going to be maybe a potential movement of people kind of taking a step back. It's going to be interesting.
I think that there's an intentionality that really changes things for people too, is that like, hey, if I'm going to sit down and actually like watch, my favorite YouTuber, like I make YouTube videos, right? People watch me. So it's kind of like the paradox of like, how do you encourage people to watch YouTube when you also don't watch YouTube? But I think if you sit down and say like, I actually want to watch this creator and see what they're saying, and not watch it at 2x speed like everybody watches things nowadays, right? And just try to like almost gorge myself on content. There actually can be benefits to it, but it has to be highly intentional. And obviously the systems are designed in a way to make that mindfulness go away as quickly as possible, right? Just one more short, man. Like just one more, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, what are you searching for, right? You're looking for the perfect piece of content that like changes your life. I don't know if it's something you're going to find, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting balance, because I don't think the solution is to ban videos, as you said, because I think you can find a lot of value. A lot of long form content, thoughtful content, I think it's very interesting, very valuable. I think a lot of people are coming back to books nowadays, kind of as a solution. But really, I do enjoy videos. I think it's an interesting format, oftentimes better than books in a certain way, depending on the topic. especially if you just want kind of more overview. So,
Especially
but I think
podcasts and long form
it's just kind of making the platform around these videos or content, as you said, more intentional, more focused on intentionality and discovering quality content, discovering interesting content, opposed to like just focusing on the clickbait addictiveness part of the content, you know. And I think we need to, like, there might need to be like some sort of redesign of platforms like YouTube for because I think discoverability is going down. I wonder what's your opinions as a YouTube creator, because I feel like it's difficult right now because there's so many things online that it's difficult to find focused interesting pieces of content information. You know, it's kind of becoming a problem. Too much is like not enough. You know?
For sure. And I mean, like, I see like very small YouTubers that like should have like hundreds of thousands of followers, but don't, right? So, I mean, like, even that is an interesting thing. I personally, like, when I find a creator that I enjoy, I actually like go to the length of adding their RSS feed to a reader, right? So like, I don't use the subscription functionality within YouTube because I would much rather like be fed the content on my own RSS feed, and that's kind of how I've gone about following people, I suppose. But for discoverability, I would agree. It's like, how do you discover new content? And like, that's kind of the question, right? So I think community is a huge factor when it comes to that. I've discovered people that have like commented on videos that I've done, or they've joined my my community, my IRC community, for example, and like I've discovered content in that way. And it almost is like the old internet where you're creating communities and finding people in that sphere. It actually does feel like the internet's not such a big place when you go about it in that regard. I don't know if you guys have ever had that experience, but you start seeing the same people all over the place. You know, like there was a blog the other day that I read and I was like, I've seen this guy's content when I was looking for like how to do something, you know, like how to install some other program or something 5 years ago. I was like, oh, like he's still at it, right? So the internet is not such a tremendously big place. It's almost a psyop to think that it is. And I think that there's also the benefit of using it for finding people in a community that is tremendously beneficial and wildly like, you find people that are just like, I would have never met this person in 100 lifetimes, and you see just like the cool stuff that people are doing, and you're like, it makes you want to do cool stuff too, right? It makes you want to kind of participate in the I don't want to say like the fight against the corporatism of the world, but it makes you be like, there's people that are doing really cool things, and you don't have to have $100 million to do that, right? So,
yeah, no, I think this is such a positive thing. You know, kind of helping people connect together and share interesting things. Like this is you know, I think this is sometimes like something that gets mixed up a little bit. I don't think like we should be against technology. It's like it brought us so many good things. But yeah, it's just kind of dosing and finding ways to use it in the correct way.
For sure.
But
and I mean, like, do what Lucas did. Reach out to people via email and be like, yo, like, I like your content. Can I talk to you? And I think you'll see that a lot of people are quite friendly. Like they do like want to have conversations about like what they're doing and how they can help you and that sort of thing too, which is really cool to see. I've really never had like that many bad experiences in doing that sort of thing, and I've just reaching out to people has been an amazing thing, really. So
yeah.
Props to Lucas.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, did it translate a little bit to kind of in-person meetups a little bit, as like kind of the in-person world as well? Or it would be great. It would have been great to do this in person, but we're across the world today. But
No, 100%. Like people travel all the time, right? Like whenever somebody's kind of around me, like I'm like, yo, come grab a coffee, come chat, that sort of thing. Like I think that people are actually open to that sort of thing, right? I've always had the thought that people are just looking for friends, right? Like most people are just looking for friends, and how do you find those people? And like the internet gives you that, like not infinite but very large pool to go through, right? So
That's awesome.
yeah.
All right, so we have more time if
For
you're
sure.
still up for it, but I actually have a
Yeah.
separate topic I think could be interesting to touch on.
Go for it.
You know, you're a bit you're big on open source software, free software. You know, you already mentioned this in today's conversations, and you know, while looking at your content, I've seen a lot of content around that as well. For our current project, you know, I think it's a challenge. You know, for hardware products specifically. You know, regarding you know, it's a product that's going to take a large effort. Ideally, a team. You know, we need to get some funding to kind of get this project going. And currently, we're not really pursuing the fully open source direction. But I do understand your point. You know, when we talk about privacy, you know, being auditable, you know, there's different advantages. But I'm curious to hear more of your opinions on the topic. You know, maybe advice for kind of emerging startups like ours, because I think that the thing is to make a great product, you know, you need the revenue, right, to hire a team and kind of build this up. So there's a little bit of there's a bit of a compromise, you know, to this world. You know, I'm just kind of curious to hear more about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, like how would you build a company around open source, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like that is the $100 million question I think a lot of people ask, right? Is like, how do I do this around an open source project and actually, you know, monetize and actually grow something that is, you know, potentially could help hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people, right? I don't know, to be honest with you. Like I think that is kind of that is the crux of the open source world, right? It's like it ain't donations. Like I would say that in and of itself. Like I think that donations are like you'll get some revenue from that, but that's not going to be enough to keep the lights on ever, right? Like I run, like there's software that I donate to on a regular basis, and like the developers like pulling in like less than $1,000 a month type of thing, right? So like that's not sustainable. Like how do you feed a family with that, right? But it's really good software. Like Maggot in Emacs, like my goodness, I ship $50 out to those people on a regular basis because I'm like, this is amazing software. I use this literally like dozens of times per day. And that's kind of the issue is like, how do you monetize open source? I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on the space.
I think it makes it even more challenging in the hardware world, you know, because the upfront costs and efforts to develop such a product kind of grows exponentially. You know, when you're building PCBs, when you're when you're working with manufacturers, I think the scope just becomes much larger. Then obviously there's giant software projects as well, but some software projects can kind of start smaller. It's hard to start small with a hardware product and just kind
for sure, because you need economies of scale, right? Like if you want to build a phone, for example, like perfect example, like your MOQ for that is going to be however many units that is, right? And I mean, like that is a massive hurdle to overcome for a new company, right? I mean, I just recently printed PCBs for a keyboard, so like that's not really of the magnitude of a smartphone, but from there, like the PCB is not the expensive part. The expensive part is everything else that attaches to the PCB, right? Like the camera modules, the screens, all of that sort of thing, right? It becomes like, how do you create the economies of scale about that? I've never done it, so I mean, I'd be interested to see how that world works.
And in the software
Yeah,
industry, like
yeah,
there's
like
also the
I
solution
think,
that some
you know,
people go for, which is having like a part of it open source. Many companies do something that you can self-host, and then, well, if you want to have it hosted by them, then you have to pay. But it's I don't know, really with the phone, it's
Right.
such a different thing than that. It's right now we're more at the experimenting phase.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like you do have your sale, right? So you have that as your obviously revenue generation right there, right? So you have that. The question then obviously becomes like, how do you maintain that, right? Because like, how do you how do you write patches for security vulnerabilities and that sort of thing,
yeah,
right? Because that obviously is going to be the question. I'm trying to think of how other open source projects have monetized in the past, and I think that I look at it from the software perspective generally, right? So I'm trying
yeah,
to think of like hardware projects that are, well, I mean, like for example, there's like microcontrollers for keyboards is a decent one because like for example, you'll have like a for example, you'll have maybe like the RP2040, for example, that is very common for 24 pin PCBs for keyboards. Perhaps you could license that, right? Like perhaps you could license the underlying firmware for it, or you could do something like that. I don't really know how these projects really keep the lights on, I suppose.
yeah. For phones specifically for this space, I think sort of Kickstarter campaigns are quite common to
Sure.
get some pre-sales traction, kind of a vote of confidence from interested customers.
Yep.
And there has been some open source, like the Pine Phone was an open source project. But I think the challenge is, and they were still able to get some pre-sales, get some traction, and an interesting team of people working on it. I think that the challenge is to kind of scale that up. If you're kind of, for example, the Light Phone kind of went another route with investors and funding rounds. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of so. Yeah, I do believe that it's challenging just due to the upfront cost. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I have the magical answer either. So it's just
Nobody does.
yeah,
Nobody
no,
does.
yeah,
Yeah. I do think that that world is in an interesting position right now. Like you have a lot of these projects that are almost like closing their doors to contribution because of the LLM stuff that's going on.
yeah. There's that as
You
well for sure.
yeah, you have a ton of like drive-by PRs and stuff that like are complete garbage. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, but I think that you almost do need some sort of way to like vet contribution nowadays. And I mean, that probably has always been a thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But do you have any
yeah.
thoughts about that?
Well, personally, I do use AI for development, but I think, of course, it's a tool like anything else. I think, you have to use it whenever it makes sense, and of course, still verify the quality. And I think, yeah, it's gonna add a lot of challenge. I think I don't know much, to be honest, about the open source world, but yeah, in terms of contribution, but also in terms of potentially using these open source projects as input for like it's easier than ever to copy an open source project now, with LLMs, or kind of fork it, or
Right.
so I think that's going to be a challenge to respect the license, and kind of keep I think in the past it kind of made sense if you had an open source piece of software, and everyone could, I don't know, in terms of license, for example, you're not allowed to commercially use it, or you can use it
Right.
for free, right? There's a lot of licenses that are like this. Uh, you know, you would say like, okay, well, for someone to kind of read all this code and rebuild this piece of open source software, it would take forever, But I think the equation is changing a little bit with LM, so
Sure.
it's gonna be a challenge. So I'm not too sure. Yeah.
Have you kind of looked into any sort of like what sort of open source libraries exist for something like making phone calls? Like, is there something that exists for that? I've never really looked into it. So,
well, for phone calls, it's just interfacing with the modem itself. But I think right now I'm using kind of there's the AT commands currently I'm using for the current modem, but it's modem specific. You need to different vendors have different. You kind of like Qualcomm has their own SDK if you were to work with Qualcomm. But yeah, one thing is interesting is right now I've been experimenting with the Spotify, this open source software as a Linux client for Spotify.
Okay.
And
Sure.
that has been really interesting. So,
you
yeah,
mentioned you mentioned. I was just sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned Qualcomm. Like, are you thinking for chip wise? Like, is that the route that you would go with it, or would you do something like? I'm just trying to think if there's anything that is even like more open, right? Because Qualcomm is, I guess, historically, like there's obviously proprietary blobs within the Qualcomm ecosystem, right? It's kind of like using the Intel, or you're familiar with obviously the Intel management engine and such. So like Qualcomm has their own proprietary blobs and stuff like that. Are you thinking going that direction, or what are you thinking?
There's two big options when it comes to Linux-based phone. Like the option one is to go with MediaTek or Qualcomm that have these integrated chips that combine both the modem and the compute together.
Sure.
But as you said, those are usually kind of behind closed doors. They have their own BSP packages, and documentation is not readily available. You can't just buy a Snapdragon chip off the shelf. You have to partner up with Qualcomm, and it's kind of very closed off. But it has the advantages that these chips are kind of the market leaders when it comes to kind of Android devices, and are well integrated, but it's quite complicated to work with them. And on the flip side, you can always just buy kind of a Linux chip, like an all-winner chip. For example, like the PinePhone uses an all-winner chip, and they combine with a modem, a chip as well, and put their own PCBs around it. And that's the other option. You might not get as much of the top of the line performance that you kind of have to do a little bit more of it yourself. And I think it might be, I'm not sure if it's the cause of some of the, earlier you mentioned some of the performance issues when it comes to calling, for example, and stuff on these Linux-based projects. So it might be one limitation when you're building up this modem infrastructure yourself. But these are the two routes to take. I think it's easier to start with not Qualcomm, because Qualcomm you have to do a partnership. But both are on the table. To be honest, it's kind of hard to say at this stage for the long run which one is going to be easiest and most practical.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're about close to the hour mark.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any last comments, Joshua, but this was a super insightful conversation.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, feel free to reach out again for sure as you guys kind of progress with it. And I mean, like I said, I would be an early adopter of a Linux phone that actually works, right? Because I think that is that is kind of the direction I would personally want to go, at least with how I run my own infrastructure and everything, right? So,
yeah, it's good to hear.
The ability to have another Linux node is awesome, right? So, yeah, good on you guys for taking this out. It's not going to be easy. We'll put it that way, right? So, but it'll be worth it if it is something that actually does pan out. So.
Awesome. Great to hear. And yeah, I learned a lot from our discussion. Definitely a lot of follow-up research points on my side. And it was great talk. Hopefully we can talk again with more progress. And
100%. Anytime, guys. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
I don't know if we can stop at. I don't know how to. But yeah.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, no worries. So you guys are just going to upload it to your channel, and then we probably just have to edit it and then upload it to your channel?
Yeah, I think that's the current plan, yeah.
What is your channel?
Yeah, we're just we did one other podcast last week, so we're really just starting, man. We're really just starting.
Cool.
And yeah, I can send you the link. We also have kind of a Discord server that we're a bit more active, trying to build up some members. I know you probably don't use Discord though, but you probably,
I made a video about not using Discord.
yeah, you probably don't use Discord. But what do you use for this type of? Yeah, you have your own community. So yeah, maybe we should consider. We should consider it. Switching.
Yeah, man. Well, come join us in the IRC. We have like 60 or so people in it. It's a pretty good conversation generally. So
cool, awesome. Yeah, I'll do it for
man.
sure. All right.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for having me, and keep me posted on it. And like I said, fire me an email if you guys ever want to chat again. So
awesome. Thank you so much. It was great. Super fun.
Take care, man. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.